Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. This is my initial thoughts video for Requiem Roana. So back to the initial thoughts series. Missed out on MLK and even didn't bother to do it for the last piece, Corinne. But for this one, I think I want to talk about it. It was an ML5 that I think a lot of people were saving for, knowing that she was coming. When they saw MLK kit and when they saw, players use him and he wasn't that good, people decided, hey, let's just skip and then wait for ML Roana. So it's like, is she worth it, right? I feel like between Kayron and then last piece Corinne and then her, some people have saved up to this point, and here's my initial thoughts as usual, what I think about her. Whether you want to pull her because she's a sexy waifu, that's a whole other story. Speaking of sexy waifu in terms of the look, I think overall she looks way better than the RGB counterpart. When the green Roana came out, she was definitely wearing like too little clothes for my liking, and I was like, whoa, like that's pretty crazy. Although we got the same like physique, she is more well dressed and she looks nicer. So overall I think more elegant, prettier. So in my opinion, I like this Roana better. Just in case you were wondering, hey Jagan, do you like the RGB better or the ML? So let's talk about her. So she is a mage, dark elemental, and Aquarius. Now as I'm making this video, we do have news that Epic 7 is deciding to remove the 7-speed frenzy given to mages in the upcoming RTA season. This is important for me to note right off the bat because obviously they're not going to abuse the speed of mages, and even for Requiem Roana, she was almost like designed in anticipation of them removing the mage buffs anyway, because she really, or hardly, arguably speaking, benefits from having speed in her kit, right? So you're thinking, okay, well maybe she's like, she doesn't need speed, so therefore she is gonna be a standard hero. While I argue that she may be okay in standard fights, she doesn't have any survival abilities for herself. Very hard to keep alive. The very fact that she shares the same star sign as someone like Archdemon Shadow. Archdemon Shadow has something like 30% crit damage reduction, and then you get really punished if you hit her and she counters you. Whereas Requiem Roana, we'll have to see based on her damage, but I don't think she has that same kind of like looming threat. Whereas and then she has no like self preservation type of skill unless you put her on lifesteal or something, but even then that's questionable. So I definitely think that she's designed kind of interesting. It's like it's still going forward with Epic 7's agenda of players trying to chase speed gear, trying to chase that first turn, what we call aggro playing in RTA, or even in maybe a cleave setup for Requiem Roana here. We'll have to see, time will tell, but it really does seem like her kit is more like sided to the aggro side. So just in case you have the misconception like she's gonna act like a Karina or whatever, I don't think that's going to be the case. But anyways, like I said, she's the same star sign as ADS, so we have very high base attack, 1300 there. Health is 4,700. It's not the highest, but it's not the lowest either for mages. But we consider mages usually low HP, high defense anyway. The speed is 108, and honestly, it doesn't have to be faster. It doesn't have to be slower based on the description of her kit. The defense at 715 is a good choice, and I am kind of glad they chose the Aquarius because the effectiveness getting an 18% there is not a bad thing. And when we're talking about the imprint release and concentration, the imprint release, if I am right that she is very good into aggressive and cleave drafts, then the imprint release is super high value, right? 10% attack on all your allies except yourself, and then she's a mage, so naturally she can be a book holder. So I'm gonna say can be a book holder. In the Epic 7 reveal video, there were 2 fights or combat demos that they showcased her in. One was using the Etika Scepter, so 50% chance to reduce a cooldown turn by 1 turn. And then the other fight was using Abyssal Crown. Now, those two, generally speaking, are going to be used in heroes that are like into teams that are not as aggressive, right? So if you think about souls and mages using book, it's generally going to be used in a fight where you're going to want to spam those souls pretty much on turn 1. You don't want to, the philosophy is that you're not accumulating it. So realistically speaking, those two showcase demos are kind of like too perfect of a scenario, especially when we're talking about like world arena drafting. But we'll talk about Requiem Roana's weaknesses in a bit. Either way, my point is that imprint release is very, very high value here, and while the imprint concentration for her might be good, I think if she is going to be played in an aggro draft, cleave draft, then I think the attack percent release is even higher value than the effectiveness, because I think if she's going to be played at base speed or built at a base speed or near base speed, you can funnel some of the stats into effectiveness. So giving her secondary role slight a good purpose. Well, actually, maybe some might say it is her primary role. Well, we'll see what her damage mods are like. First things first is the skill 2, which is a passive, Boundless Obsession. It reads this: reduces the effect of combat readiness increases provided by speed by 50% at the start of the foremost ally's turn except for the caster. Increases combat readiness of the caster by up to 100%, so it'd be +5. It can be activated once per turn. So the secondary portion. Now, at first, when I read this, right, I was looking at the video over and over, looking at the combat demo. It's like it reads like as if, because it doesn't say to the caster, so it reads as if like it just slows down everybody's combat readiness gained by speed by 50%. And what I thought originally was how fast they slid or moved along the CR bar after the initial speed CR, and then it does not affect things like, let's say, a Ravi or other, like a Ravi getting hit, she has natural CR or anything like that. Durandal, Ido's Cheer. That's what I thought. I thought it was like, oh, it pretty much cut speed in half, but CR is not halved, so it's not like a Politis. But apparently, this is just for her, all right? So apparently this is just for her, and if that is the case, that means that your initial speed, so let's say for example you're at 200 speed, you build a 200 speed Requiem or Roana, depending on your opponent's speeds, of course, the top speeds, because it's all relative, you might start at maybe 50% of the CR bar or something like that, right? But because that's taking it from the base speed. Now with this like combat range reduced by 50% though, you're gonna see half of that value. So I'm assuming when you enter the field, you are already having your speed, and it's based on the combat demo. That seems to be the case. I'll talk about it when we get to that, which is, I think, is the next slide anyway. So just to keep that in mind, it obviously it feels like whoa, that's kind of bad, right? Why would you want your hero to be slow? But of course, the start of the turn, foremost ally's turn except the caster, increases up to 100%. That's where she gets the benefit, right? So she has a passive that will give her 100% CR boost when the foremost ally gets a turn, all right, at the start of the turn. So before they even do anything, you can already have Requiem Roana cut behind. Now, I think in a specific scenario, I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but I think a specific scenario, there's a reason why that's worded, right? So it's like, I don't know, like somehow, or maybe passively, your foremost ally doesn't get a turn or something like that. It's at the start of the turn, so before any kind of mechanic passive happens, she already jumps the gun and to 100%. Now, if you're jumping to 100%, unless there is another hero that has some kind of passive CR push that pushes past 100%, Roana is going to get the turn after your foremost ally. Now, let me put this into like kind of a picture. Let me see if I just it'd be easier if I do this on this screenshot, or yeah, maybe let's move here. So in this part of the video, this is a screen capture of their video, of course. Leica just did the S3. You can see the speed down and the sleep on the A Robbie. There is immunity on the others, so that doesn't affect them. Immunity is casted onto the Leica's team, and the foremost ally is going to be Athletica. So she's the next to go, but the first but she's the foremost ally. So once she gets the turn, you see that I've highlighted on purpose. Roana's in the back there, right? So let's just assume that is like, that's very, very slow. That's very behind the CR bar. So back to this. Oops, back to the skill here. When it says reduces the effect of combat readiness increases provided by speed by 50%, it is definitely something that takes effect right as you enter the field. So if you are at 100 speed or base speed, which is what, 108? Yeah. You'll start with the combat readiness assuming that she's at 54 speed. Okay, so you're halved. That's why it's so far back. So something like a base speed BBK, generally, even with an opener at 300, would be around 50% of the CR bar. On this screenshot, this is well below the 50% CR bar. I'm just gonna draw a really quick line here, just in a selected color. Just a really quick example of where that would be. That's like roughly around here. So if you have any like experience cleaving with BBK, you know what I'm talking about. Like a base speed BBK right here, and let's say an Ahmed is like right here, 300, BBK would be right here, but she's right here, right? So you can really see that it is applying the speed at the beginning, which means that giving her any speed at all will hardly have any benefit, right? Especially on turn one, right? Because it's halved. Yeah, in this screenshot again, notice that she'll jump. This is at the beginning of the turn now. As you see Guiding Light on Leica in the top there, it's casted because the turn is ended and the start of the turn of Athletica is just happening. So I caught this in a couple frames. And Roana, because the look at the headshot there, it looks really big. It cuts and now she's at 100%, right? Okay, so here's a couple things. If like so in a World Arena draft right now, right, she is obviously better if you have an opener that can take turn one. Okay, ideally for her scenario, because her S3 does CR pushback, it does cooldown extension by 1 turn. Again, when we talk about it, I'm kind of jumping the gun. But you ideally want like an opener that can do an AoE strip. Now, Ran is one of the fastest openers right now, and Ran can soul burn if you use Roana as a book holder. So that means you can resist ER as long as you hit, of course, and you can strip, defense break, all that kind of stuff. That sounds pretty good. But the issue is that, again, in a World Arena draft, you got a couple things. If you're drafting Roana, you got to keep in mind that you can't draft her early because they can choose a Politist on you. So a Politist would then have your CR, so she'd be at 50 CR. So you imagine right here, where she is right now, she'll gain 50 CR and then cut right behind that A-Robbie, where that A-Robbie head is. So that's not gonna be too effective. Now you're just like, well, Dragon, it's just Politist, right? Like, how many of you, if you guys play Ahmed or anything like that, you have to ban Politist, or you have to choose Politist on your side, because realistically, Politist can just nullify whatever Ahmed is doing and then kill Ahmed's DPS, unless you're going with like a tank or, you know, a cleanser in the second turn, like a hand guy or something. But you got that issue. The second issue is this. Then Peyra also becomes an issue. If you're contesting, let's say you have Ceolilius and you have like an Athletica or something like that, someone could choose a Peyra, and Peyra did come back because of the coupling of Ceolilius Athletica. Peyra comes back and then you can't draft him or Roana. Okay, so those are like counters, right? And in the future, if there's other heroes that can do restrict, that's not going to be good either. We have Sharoon coming. I think Sharoon has a restrict. No, wait, no, never mind, sorry. I was thinking about someone else. But the more heroes that get released with restrict, the less ML Roana has in terms of, value. Now, I'm saying that from a standard fight, okay? The Peyra counter pick and the Politist counter pick are kind of like usually counter drafts to you playing aggro, so they're trying to stop you from doing it. All right, so that kind of shuts ML Roana back. And then if they don't do that, then what does that mean? That means you have to own multiple openers that you feel comfortable speed contesting to have ML Roana in. So here's a couple things that I feel are an issue in terms of if you're using her for World Arena, you will almost always need 2 300 plus speed openers to pair with her. And then ideally your openers have really good synergy with other DPS, so that Roana won't be just like a dead pick, you know what I mean? So you're not relying on the openers as the damage dealer, and Roana, if yours is not built as damage, you have no damage left, right? So that becomes an issue. The other thing is that I guess for Roana's kit, something that could be beneficial is that you could, I guess, bait some kind of Zeo. So let's say, for example, you choose Celilius, right? You choose Celilius, and you know Celilius is usually turn 1, okay? And then you choose someone behind Celilius. I don't know, maybe a green Sid. Someone chose Zeo into you. Now, they can do one of two things, right? They could push back your Celilius, but your Celilius could be taking the not front spot. So if he pushes back your frontmost ally, because it has to be at the beginning of the frontmost ally turn, right? So Zeo can push back that frontmost ally and then stall the turn so that Elmo Roana doesn't get it. And then I guess if you're using what I was calling as the scenario, Celilius on the top. Let me see if I can draw it out so that way you have a visual of what I'm thinking of. So let's say your opponent Zeo makes it in, and you have a Celilius and you have a green Sid. Okay, for whatever reason, okay? If there's a synergy, just hang on with me here. And then you put Celilius in the back, but she's usually the start. And then Sid is here. And then Roana, let's say it is exactly where she is right now in the back. Zeo could do a couple of things, right? Depending on your draft, right? Zeo can push Celilius because she might be a threat just to get the vigor buff, the provoke, and the attack down on his team. He could push back to Sid. Let's say it's not an Athletica. He could push back to Sid. So Sid is now pushed back. Maybe he can now cut with his secondary DPS or something. Or he could push back Roana in a silencer so she can't S3. Right? So there does seem to be like, maybe there's a play where you can bait Zeo that he has to compromise a push. But in all three of my examples, whether it's a Celilius or whatever, a secondary opener, or Roana, it seems that any one of these Zeo push it could disable your team, right? But of course, I'll leave this up to like the big brain cleaver, big brain aggro players to figure out. But I just do feel like because she is a reactionary hero, she might not be as good. So something like Ida is really good with like non-attack skill openers too, right? She's a book and she can AoE twice, right? And realistically she can strip and then stun and then also do CR pushback and CR push forward. That seems to be a lot more packed than ML Roana. And you don't also have to feel like ML Roana, oh, it can have speed, so let's funnel everything into maybe bulk, maybe attack, and then maybe effectiveness or something. Ida just has to focus on damage, right? If she makes it through in the right draft, she'll work. Emma Roana right now is kind of like, okay, she does the S3, she pushes back, maybe stalls one turn, and so she may not feel as damage threatening as someone like Ida, but of course Ida itself has her own flaws. So I'm not saying that Ida is perfect, or I'm not even saying that, you know, Roana is compared to Ida, and if she's worse than Ida, she sucks. I'm not saying that, but I'm definitely thinking that she definitely has to have openers that give her the turn. Otherwise, she's gonna be sitting back there. And what if your whole team gets crowd controlled? So my issue with ML Roana in a standard fight is that if you somehow choose her into a standard draft, which again I don't think you will, let's say your fastest hero is like a hand guy, 250 speed or something like that. What if you get crowd controlled? Like, you know, Solitaria pushback, and then like ML Flan, S3 pushback, everybody's burnt now. Like, you know, like there's a lot of standard CR manipulators that won't consider aggro, won't be considered cleave, but can definitely stall Roana back long enough, as long as they keep pushing that foremost ally backwards, or, you know, just controlling. But yeah, like I said, the mechanic is that if you have they get a turn, even if they're stunned, As long as the foremost ally gets a turn, she will get a turn. So there are cool aspects, I think, to Roana's S2. I think on paper it sounds like very, very powerful, right? Like if you think about like someone that can CR boost with pretty much no like mechanical limitation, right? It's not a non-attack skill. It's not like she has to get a buff or a teammate has to get a buff. It's literally someone has to take a turn and she gets a turn. That sounds pretty OP. But again, I just think that the thought of maybe she's gonna be like, you know, the savior of standard fights, I don't think that's gonna be the case. But I think she's gonna be a nice tool for like very aggressive drafts. As long as you have a lot of 300 speed openers. So again, let me reemphasize, I know I've repeated this over and over, you know, but it's more of like, I think Smilegate wants players to still play very aggressively, still hunt for like, you know, get your 300 speed heroes, 310 speed heroes up. But they're giving you heroes that will benefit as a secondary cause of your 300 plus speed openers. I said that when I was reviewing the balance patch, which will be released after I upload this video, of Jacko, and some of you guys were leaving in the comments down below that Summer Break Charlotte as well. Like on turn 1 she already has the enhanced dual attack. So realistically, like both Jacko's buff and Summer Break Charlotte's buff and Requiem Roana, it really does feel like it's like you can gear them full damage or bulk or some kind of support, but you allow your Rands, you allow your Peyras, your Cealiliuses, your Zeos to still be openers so that you can play still more aggro. So unfortunately the meta has not shifted. Maybe the mage, what do you call it? The mage frenzy getting removed will help a bit, but I don't think Requiem Roana is gonna fix what players want to fix, but rather just exacerbate the thing that it is like the current meta, which is like everybody plays aggro, and the faster speed gear you have, the better chances you have of winning your aggro draft, because you have more selection, and then you can also compete or contest your opponent's speed depending on the situation. Anyways, rant over. Let's talk about the S3. Attacks all enemies with a horde of illusions, increasing cooldowns by 1 turn and decreasing combat range by 30%. Cannot trigger a critical hit and penetrates the target's defense. Increases damage dealt every time the skill is used and can stack up to 3 times. So I think the stacking up to 3 times part might give the illusion that players think that, oh, she's made for a standard fight. But like I said, there's nothing in her kit that helps her survive. But the thing is that at least the S3 is full defense pen. I mean, when it says penetrate defense and it's AoE, it's 100%, right? So people will think about Last Rider Crow. Hey, look, the Last Rider Crow has the same thing. He also stacks damage. She's going to be attack scaling since there's no HP or defense mentioned here in terms of the scaling. And we do know that S1 does scale on attack. So for her, I think the stats are pretty easy to distribute. It's just more of like, which way do you want to sway more, right? We'll have to see what is the sweet spot for the damage she can do while perhaps maintaining bulk to benefit from the stacking at all. Or again, if she is, to my theory craft, going to be stronger into aggro draft, which means that maybe you could just go all out, you know, maybe a bit of bulk, but like all out just attack and a high effectiveness so that she can get the cooldown turn and the CR pushback, right? So just in case people want to, I don't know, like if you have 2 really good openers, let's say Ran and then Cealilius, and then you have Requiem Roana, like doesn't that, you know, kind of end the game, right? If she has a cooldown reduction for 1 turn and then also can push back, seems pretty aggressive. So I think the S3 sounds pretty good to my book. Cooldown is 4 turn, as you can see there, with a +3 -1. So like again, conceptually I think the skill is fine. It's more of like holistically, like is she going to be really good at doing this? I think that once you have the right setup for her, which is some kind of opener that can strip, her S3 of course is going to do damage. It's going to do damage because the pen. It's going to do its effect in terms of disabling because of the turn cooldown, because of the combat range pushback. So I think skill 3 is very, very solid. if we're gonna rate skill to skill. Here's some of the S3 animation frames, which I really like. I think that her S3 is pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of like Ahmed, where it's like a lot of it was the close-up on the face. But what I do like about ML Roana is that compared to someone like Ahmed, it doesn't end with just the face. Like there's this kind of like you know, Dark Souls, Elden Ring vibe about this thing, if you've played those games, of course. And then it does kind of like remind me of like she's on a stage, which is like lore correct. She's on a stage, and like even opera, like you can really sense like she has a tear. She removes the flower from her design from their eye there, and then she throws this, and I don't know, like I'm not gonna question why she's throwing the rose, but maybe that's also a lore thing as well. But just like the fact that like she is like, you know, looks sad, and then she, you know, I think overall it's a nice animation. Probably not one of my favorites, but it's definitely good enough, right? So it's not MO Charles, let's put it that way. Let's talk about the S1. So S1, Touch of Darkness, attacks the enemy with magic, and then up to so 75% chance to decrease defense if you +3, and it cannot trigger a critical hit. So again, no need for crit, no need for speed, no need for crit damage, because all her skills are attack based. So realistically, she's a easy hero to build. It just depends on where you want to emphasize the stats, right? So some people are thinking like, you know, with some effectiveness must be good, like 100, maybe 150, okay? Or maybe you have it like around 100 and then self-toggle the self-imprint if you need more effect, depending on the fight. And then 0 speed, and then as much attack as possible, and as much bulk as possible. Some people might swing to putting 100 more gear score into ER. But again, if she is going to be used into aggro, maybe that's not necessary. Maybe the ER is not necessary, but we'll see. But I think ER could be good. If she gets disabled and she can't do the S3, she's kind of a sitting duck. Her S3 is powerful, just like we can see Lua, but Lua has Beguile, Lua has speed buff, and Lua is just disgusting. So they do use Lua in their demonstration video as well. So again, I mean, it just goes to show, like, Requiem Roana just pair with like a fast Athletica, fast Celilius, fast Ran, fast Pera, fast Lua, and then you can kind of get the picture why I think that she's meant to be more aggro than a standard, right? Because all those, or most of them, oh actually no, all of them have a strip, so they can remove the immunity, right? Anyways, and then continuing on, it's successful attack, so it can't miss, okay? It will deal additional damage proportional to the caster's attack. Now, it's generally my finding or the observation of the community that if there's this thing that's like attacking with additional damage, whether it's like Iberia's Tooth or like Rengar Specialty Drink, whatever, it's some kind of like damage mod based on your attack, of course, with a 70% defense pen. Now, I'm not quite sure if that's going to be the case here. Obviously, when we get the data mine, we will know for sure. But if you soul burn, it's only 10 souls, not too much. Effect chance is 100%, so 100% defense break, and then decreases the target's defense for 2 turns instead. So, like, it's pretty solid. It's definitely pretty solid. It's not nothing. Because if somehow your frontmost ally has 2 turns, or cuts a CR to 50% and is really fast as well, Requiem Roana can technically get 2 turns quite quickly, right? So I don't know who in this case, but maybe Ahmed pushes up a actually no, Ahmed wouldn't work there because she has swift attack. I don't know, like let's say Blue Kisei, right, is your frontmost ally. She does the S3, she has 50% CR boost, so she's in the middle now, but she's pretty fast. Requiem Roana gets a turn. After her turn, Kisei goes again, she gets another turn. There is a case where I feel like after she does her S3, the S1 does have very good benefit, just because, again, assuming that your frontliner, maybe in a guiding light as well, maybe it's not a 50% CR cutter, will like cycle turns quite fast. And if that's the case and Requiem Roana is hard to kill, then she still brings benefit to the team by doing defense breaks. Heck, I'm actually thinking right now in Theorycraft, maybe she could be an anchor. Like, you just imagine you run some openers with Guiding Light and maybe a Sid with Wind Rider or something, and then she's just an anchor, so like all bulk, and she's just there just like landing defense breaks or something like that. I mean, I'm just thinking about it really out loud, and I think that can work too. So, but again, goes back to like the aggro draft, right? So I took a screenshot of the before and after. This is her damage, S1 of course, to Proof of Valor A Ravi. Now, because it's Epic 7 Showcase, we always kind of want to, you know, take it with a grain of salt in terms of like how much defense is that A Ravi, right? Like, is it actually good defense? Is it bad? All that can make a difference, but I think it's more of like seeing the contrast between the damage of the extra from the damage, from the attack. So the Aburi's Tooth proc, the pop, we got 7,880 damage right here, and then pops to 12,705. So you're roughly getting about what, 5,000 ish more damage, which is significant. Now in this screenshot though, it's kind of cropped off right now, she is attack buffed. I think that was from like Leica S2 or something like that. That's why there is the target debuff on the Ray Robbie. So that was attack buff, and again, we don't know what Roana's stats are for this, so there's only room for speculation. But let me just put it this way: I think that she is a necessary component, I think, for the way that I believe Smilegate wants players to play aggressive, right? So having, again, going back to the thought of like my observation of seeing Jacko's buff, the comments on my YouTube channel helped me see that Summer Break Charlotte's buff as well. It's all about like, if you have a hero that can run first turn, there's some looming threat that's right behind them. And then so Jacko gets a CR boost, Summer Break Charlotte gets a AoE Death Break into a CR boost, and then Roana gets a CR boost. You can kind of see a pattern, you can kind of see an agenda in their game design. Now, just because I broke that down, and even if I'm accurate or not, does not mean anything really for people who enjoy World Arena. But for people who are really tired of like, I think like cleave and aggro, whatever, I think you just gotta hold on a bit longer. Like, you know, they're releasing the slow kind of reactive heroes still. Like Karina was one that was a really big one that I think really caused a thorn in the side for people playing aggressive or cleave. And then you know, Dilibet's buff has still been pretty good, substantial, I think, versus people who are faster than you, and you need some kind of way to punish them for drafting certain heroes, right? Zio was a good one, ML Ball still a thing. Anyways, so that's my thought on Requiem Roana. How do I think I want to build her? I think I would, if I pulled her, I would probably choose to build the way I said. It would be pure attack, some effectiveness, maybe ER, we'll see, but I'm thinking about the anchor thing now. So I really do think that bulk could be really good, and then play a lot of Guiding Light or, you know, self-stealth heroes with her might be pretty crazy. Her bulk is not going to be super easy to achieve, but the realistic thing is, if you're not going to rely on her as a damage dealer per se, then you can really emphasize the bulk. I mean, I've seen some really bulky Archdemon Shadow, and she still has to be on a speed boot, right? So consider that, she still has to be on a speed boot, and most of them either run a crit rate neck, or they are HP neck or defense neck with ER ring, or maybe effectiveness ring if they're wild. And so for Requiem Roana, because all three of her main stats can be, you know, HP, defense percent, or attack percent, her build is very flexible. If you're playing in an aggro draft, you don't even need to get fancy with like lifesteal set or counter set. Some people are saying attack set, even though attack set is still generating a very low value, but she doesn't gain anything from anything else anyway. So realistically, it's like attack set might be her best in slot, no doubt. She doesn't benefit from speed set, she won't benefit from revenge set. She probably can be built on pure golem sets. That's what I'm thinking right now. Immunity, maybe, but I think the 4-piece set attack set might be just the highest value I can think of right now. But again, her substats are so specialized. I don't think people will have her gear on day one. Like in terms of like right now, but like maybe by the time of her release, people would have farmed it. But I think the substats again you're going for will be 0 speed, 0 crit rate, 0 crit damage, all percent attack, HP percent, defense percent. Maybe some flat health is acceptable because of her low base. Effectiveness, ER, so those kind of things. So maybe you could pair an ER set. Just depends on what you want to emphasize. If it's bulk, HP defense sets. If it's high attack, of course, attack set, I think really high value. With her base attack also very, very good. And then ER sets can be, I think, just as good. Even hit set, honestly, could be good as well. And again, it just depends on what you want her secondary role to be, and then you decide from there, right? So anyways, hopefully that was informative. Hopefully, you know, it maybe caused you to think about different ideas, or you know, a different view on what you thought about her. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. How do you think she can be used? How will she be used? Yeah, I'm just gonna end this here. Thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, if you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.